What is up, guys? Here are my predictions for UFC Fight Night happening in Fortaleza, Brazil. It seems like it's been a while since the last card, right? The first UFC on ESPN Plus card seemed like it's been a while ago, so I'm really excited for this card, and there are some great and fun matchups on the entire card. Ricardo Ramos versus Said Nurmagomedov is going to be an excellent fight. Thiago Alves versus Max Griffin is going to be an excellent fight. I'm curious about the Alexa Grasso versus Marina Rodriguez fight. But we're going to cover the main card on this one, since all the fights on the main card seem pretty promising. Now, we're going to start with Livia Sosa versus Sarah Frota. Now, this is going to be a very interesting fight, and Livia Sosa, I believe, is one of the best additions the UFC could have made in terms of the strawweight division. I mean, we're talking about a former champion of Invicta with great skills. I mean, there's a reason why her debut fight against Alex Chambers, she was a 12-1 favorite. Now, she brings a lot of skills to this one and great attributes as well. She is extremely fast, good power, great footwork, never standing still, never staying in front of the opponent, and she is a solid, lethal BJJ artist with sick and slick submission skills. She likes to throw the overhand right a little bit too much, but I do think it will favor her in this fight specifically because of Frota's southpaw stance, and she does stand very, very tall, and she's very left-handed heavy. So if Sosa can get on the inside of the left hand of Frota, she could potentially land the right overhand on the taller opponent and transition that to something like a double leg to take it to the ground, where she can utilize her superior BJJ skills. And she also has a nasty body kick, and the fact that they're in opposite stances, the right kick to the body is really going to hurt Frota, I think. Frota is also a really good, slick BJJ artist, but she's a lot better offensively than she is defensively. Really good scrambles, great mission control, great triangles, all that sort of stuff. She's very dangerous in the guard, but she leaves openings on herself, which makes me think that Sosa, the more traditional style that she brings, and the more sound style that she brings, is going to be able to trump Frota's. And other than that, Frota on the feet is more of a boxer than anything that's very left-handed heavy. Right? Everything is with the left hand. She does have better power in her hands than Sosa does, but she doesn't move anywhere really. She's a very, very plodding fighter. Saying she doesn't have good footwork is somewhat of an understatement, I believe. She doesn't cut opponents off at all, and that is going to be a huge liability for her against someone who moves as much as Sosa. And also for Frota moving further in this division, she's going to be facing a lot of fast fighters with really good footwork. And Frota doesn't really have the best takedown defense. It's not bad, but we have seen in her fight with Tatiane Fontes do Couto, I think I pronounced that right. I don't know what language that is. But we saw in that fight that she wasn't able to stop the inside trips of her opponent that well. And she got caught in very close arm bars in that fight. Her takedown defense isn't bad. It isn't the greatest. She's going to need a good takedown defense. But the thing is, her submission defense is not great. And she's going to need it to be great to fight someone like Sosa. So my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Livia Sosa. I think she's going to get a second round armbar. Second round submission I'm going to go by. And I think she's going to throw some overhands, be very elusive early in the fight, throw out some leg kicks, throw out some body kicks. And whenever Frota throws that left hand, I think Sosa's going to go right under it, take Frota to the ground, and eventually submit her. So then we go to the next fight. Johnny Walker versus Justin Ledet. Now, I cannot wait for this fight. I think this should be one of the most anticipated fights on this entire card. You have two light heavyweight prospects, very fun and exciting fighters, both strikers for the most part, which makes you think, why would these two get matched up this early in their careers? I mean, they're both actual prospects of a division that needs prospects, and Johnny Walker is making his second fight. This is Ledet's fifth fight in the UFC, I believe, and they're going to be facing each other already. But this is Ledet's second fight in the light heavyweight division in the UFC. But it is a great fight, so that's probably why. These two guys are strikers for the most part. Walker's more of a kicker than anything with good tight clinch skills. He throws some wild punches out there. He'll throw back fists out of nowhere. He has powerful kicks. They're so heavy. You can just feel the impact just watching the fights. And Ledet is more of a boxer than anything. Even though Johnny Walker, I believe, has more knockout power than Ledet does pretty much anywhere, Ledet is a much more technical puncher than Walker. So if Walker throws something wild, Ledet can potentially catch him with some meaningful counters. And Ledet, if you want to compare him to anybody's style you have ever seen, it's very comparable to Nick Diaz. It's like a light heavyweight version of a Nick Diaz. Not the greatest footwork, plods for the most part, but excellent boxing, great countering skills, good check hooks, good straight punches, great body shots, and a respectable BJJ game. Doesn't really go for takedowns so much himself, but if he gets taken down, it is something to be alarmed by, right? And when he defends punches, he loves to cover up, put his guard up really high, and then find his counters off of that. Very similar to a Nick Diaz. And that can leave a guy like Walker whenever he comes in on Ledet. It could leave him open for counter shots. But Walker's going to fight from a distance for the most part. He's going to throw kicks like crazy. Leg kicks going to be emphasized, I believe. Head kicks might show up later in the fight after the damage on the leg of Ledet forces him to open up his guard a little bit more. And even off the damage to the leg, Johnny Walker might find some punching opportunities. And we have seen Walker throw some wild, untechnical, unconventional strikes. I forgot which fight it was, but he threw a leg kick at the opponent. I don't think it landed clean, and the opponent tried to counter him, and he just swung a back fist at the opponent and caught him clean with it. I mean, that is the sort of stuff that can catch technical strikers because the technical strikers don't see those unorthodox strikes that often. So, my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Johnny Walker. I'm going to go by a second round TKO. I could even see a third round TKO. We don't know where his cardio is really at or anything, but we do know he is super athletic. He has a better kicking game, and he's much, much better in the tie clinch, I believe. Much better elbows like we saw in the Khalil Roundtree fight where he just walked right through him, pushed him back, big brothered him in there kind of. I think Ledet does have opportunities to finish this fight himself, to catch Walker coming in, make it more technical on the inside, but I think Walker with the right strategy should beat a guy like Ledet. And then we go to Charles Oliveira versus David Tamer. Another great fight, but this time it's more of a grappler versus striker matchup. I wouldn't say they're specialists in those areas because Oliveira does have a respectable standing game, striking game, and David Tamer has excellent takedown defense, but for the most part, that's where they want the fights. Oliveira's going to want it on the ground, David Tamer's going to want it on the feet. And when fights like that occur, the guy with the better takedown defense, he usually wins those fights, because Oliveira's going to need it on the ground to really impose his will and impose his superior skills on top of Tamer, but if he cannot get it to that world, if he cannot cross that bridge, which are the takedowns, how is he going to deal with David Tamer on the feet? Tamer's also going to be the bigger man in here. He's going to be a little bit shorter with a little bit shorter of a reach, but he's more of a real lightweight. Charles Oliveira is a bit of a small lightweight when it comes to size and weight and all that stuff. So Oliveira has some of the best submissions ever in the UFC. He has the most submission wins in UFC history. He could pull it all. Guillotines are nasty, Peruvian neckties, arm bars, triangles, rear naked chokes. Everything in the book, he has it over Tamer. But Tamer trumps Oliveira when it comes to overall striking. Charles Oliveira is more of a Muay Thai kind of a striker than anything very traditional with it. A lot of push kicks, not the greatest footwork. I think David Tamer's going to have a much better footwork game. He's going to be able to circle around Oliveira a little bit better. And when a bigger man who has more power and is a bit faster can move around the smaller fighter like that, it usually spells trouble. So David Tamer with the lightning quick strikes only matched by someone like Edson Barboza, with some great knockout power, with some excellent technique, with some insane kicks, and just overall better technical striking with a really good takedown defensive game. I'm going to have to go with David Tamer in this one. And I'm going to go by a third round TKO. Third round TKO I'll go by. I think he will overwhelm Oliveira with his volume and his speed, with any strike he lands. And then we go to Demian Maia versus Lyman Good. This might be the hardest, or one of the hardest fights in the entire card to predict. I mean, it's either going to go one or two ways. Demian Maia takes the guy to the ground and submits him, or Good is going to be able to stop the takedowns and knock Demian Maia out. It's going to be a very similar thing to someone like Tyron Woodley, other good, powerful strikers with good takedown defense, right? And that formula is usually what it takes to beat a guy like Maia. But how good is Lyman Good's takedown defense? By stats, it seems pretty good, right? But who is trying to take him down? That's the only thing. The guy who tried to take him down the most was a striker in Alizu Zaleski dos Santos. He's nowhere near a wrestler, takedown artist, or even a grappler that Demian Maia is. And he failed a lot of takedowns. So the stats of Lyman Good might be a little bit inflated because of that. But what if it is actually that good? We don't know. Which makes this fight almost impossible to predict. But I'm going to predict it just to make it more fun. And Demian Maia's usual strategy of backing up the opponent to the cage to get a takedown is just throwing out a lot of feints. Take a wide stance, keep stepping forward long, and make it seem like he's going to throw something or shoot in, because he does have a very low stance early in the fight. But he does fade later, so his takedowns are going to be the most powerful and the most effective in the first round, I believe. Now, that usual strategy is going to have a bit of trouble with a guy like Lyman Good, because if you don't know about Lyman Good, he has insane knockout power, very imposing in the cage. He loves to be the assertive fighter in there, right? He has a solid stance. He doesn't like to take a back step. He has an excellent right hand, good left hook, really good jab to get the opponent to back up on him. So if Demian Maia tries to move in with those feints, he can easily eat a jab on his way in. And then everything about Demian Maia's approach just gets thrown out the window. And Lyman Good just really likes a time for his right hand to eventually land, because one right hand from Good is enough to put out anybody in this division. So the usual strategy of Demian Maia is probably not going to work that effectively unless Lyman Good puts too much respect on Demian Maia's wrestling game. But other than that, Lyman Good should have more of a controlling advantage on the feet. The only thing is, if it eventually gets to the ground somehow, some scramble, he backs up too much, he allows David Maia to walk him down, his takedown defense is actually not as good as his stats say, he is potentially going from not defending any submissions in the UFC to facing one of the most dangerous and formidable BJJ artists to ever compete in this sport. That is a big jump on your submission defense and just BJJ defense. So that might be somewhat of a problem. But my prediction will go to Lyman Good. And the reason for that is I think he has to develop one game plan, one type of game plan to win this fight. Literally focus most of this fight on stopping takedowns from David Maia, especially against the cage, as well as working on getting up when David Maia pulls guard. That sort of stuff, right? The striking, I believe he has it all down to a T. It's completely in his favor. I think if he has a good camp behind him, if he has a good corner behind him, they should be able to develop a game plan to beat a guy like Damian Maia. So I'm going to go with Lyman Good. I'm going to go by a third round TKO, especially because Damian Maia doesn't have the best cardio. And Lyman Good has shown in his fight with Dos Santos that he can actually go 3 rounds pretty well. So I'm going to go with Lyman Good, third round TKO, as Maia is getting tired from the takedowns and he gets beat up a little bit on the feet. And then we go to the co-main event, which is really somewhat of like a main event of this card, but just it seemed like Jose Aldo didn't want it to be a 5-round fight, or his coach didn't or something. Jose Aldo versus Renato Moicano. Well, this is the title eliminator fight, I think, if Renato Moicano wins. And if Jose Aldo wins, I don't know what happens to this division, because there's no way he's going to be fighting Max Holloway for the third time within like a year and a half. So this should be an excellent fight. Absolutely insane fight. The veteran, the legend, one of the greatest Brazilian fighters of all time, who's been around for a while, fighting the young, up-and-coming Brazilian kid. And it creates for a pretty interesting story when you probably look back at it in the future. The first thing we have to take note about this fight is it's a 3-round fight, and a 3-round Jose Aldo is a very dangerous opponent. But then again, we've only seen Moicano in 3-round fights, and he always looked pretty good. Jose Aldo has some of the best striking in the UFC right now. He has probably the best takedown defense I've ever seen. He is literally the anti-wrestler of MMA. If you rely on wrestling, you rely on to take this guy to the ground, you are most likely going to lose against Jose Aldo. That's how explosive and how technical he is with this takedown defense. And you get stuck with striking with a very powerful, quick, devastating striker who is dangerous everywhere. Some of the nastiest leg kicks you'll ever see, which I would think would be a huge weapon against a guy like Moicano. Because Moicano does not check leg kicks. He does not check leg kicks. It's almost like the whole thing when he went against Uriah Faber. People knew that Faber didn't check leg kicks, but the thing is, Moicano has more area surface to get leg kicked on, and he keeps a much wider stance, which makes it easier to leg kick. But the only danger is Renato Moicano could probably reach in over the leg kicks to land some strike, which Jose Aldo probably thinks he's at a safe distance throwing that leg kick. So I would think that would be a huge weapon, but for some reason, this is something it's very hard to predict, but for some reason, Jose Aldo goes against throwing leg kicks. I have no idea why that is. It might even be because we talk about it so much. He probably wants to show his other skills. I don't know what it is, but if it's that reason, I think he should use what he has to use to win. Because we want to see his leg kicks. It's not like we're saying that's the only thing he has. We want to see him throw leg kicks again. When he throws it, it's just... I mean, you feel bad for his opponent, but it's fun to watch, man. I mean, when do you ever say you're excited to see someone throw leg kicks in a fight other than Jose Aldo and maybe Edson Barboza? These days, probably nobody else. But we want to see Jose Aldo use what he's best at. But other than leg kicks, he has really good boxing. If he can get it on the inside, I think he can tag up Moicano a bit. Jose Aldo is also extremely fast. He has a lightning quick left hook. It's so nasty. You saw a little bit in the Jeremy Stevens fight right to the body, even though it's somewhat of an uppercut as well. But you've seen it a lot against Chad Mendes, just throughout his entire career, and he combines that really well with pivoting. He'll stay in place, he'll give you feints, he'll show you some head movement, and when you try to throw a straight punch at him, for an example, so you throw a straight right hand, he's good with slipping on the outside of it, pivoting with his left foot, swinging his right foot around, carrying that momentum right into his left hook, and it lands hard on opponents. And coincidentally, that straight right hand is going to be something Moicano's probably going to want to use a lot against Jose Aldo. The jab and the straight right hand, because he does have long reach, and he's just good with it naturally. Moicano's hooks and uppercuts are a little bit wild. They're not really that technical, and they come really long. And a big disadvantage for Moicano is he is not that fast overall. Jose Aldo is going to have a major speed advantage in this fight, and especially with the kicks, because Moicano doesn't really set them up a whole lot, and he loves to throw that switch high kick. But that is one thing to take note. When have we ever seen Jose Aldo have to defend high kicks This is the first time in all the fights we've seen of Jose Aldo in the UFC and the WEC, this is one of the first times that he's going to have to actually defend meaningful high kicks from his opponent. And that is going to be very interesting. So my prediction for this one's a pretty tough fight to call. I'm going to have to go with Jose Aldo on this one, and I'm going to go by a second round TKO. Now, there's something big about this fight. The striking game, especially the boxing game of Renato Moicano, especially if he's moving backwards, I don't believe it's going to be that dangerous for Jose Aldo to move in on. The punches of Renato Moicano aren't the greatest. It's only dangerous when he's moving forward and he's able to establish a jab. And if Aldo can take away the jab of Moicano, I believe he's going to be able to handle Moicano's game a lot better. So I'm going to go with Jose Aldo. I think the leg kick is going to be devastating. And I think he's going to catch Moicano with an overhand right, potentially to a left hook afterward. Something like that. And then we go to the main event. I believe the winner of this fight should fight for the title next. Raphael Assuncao versus Marlon Moraes. This is a title eliminator fight, I believe. I think the winner of this should be fighting for the title next. This is going to be a pretty good fight. They fought before, and Assuncao won by a split decision, which a lot of people thought Moraes won. It was very close. I don't think it was a robbery. The 30-27 for Assuncao was egregious, but the overall fight was a very close one. Can you look back at that fight? Of course, because they fought each other. But they both have fought a few times since then. Assuncao fought Matthew Lopez and he fought Rob Font. He actually knocked out Matthew Lopez, his first knockout since 2012. And beating Rob Font the way he did, it was a pretty impressive fight. Marlon Moraes, on the other hand, he had 3 fights. He beat John Dodson by split decision. Then he knocked out Aljamain Sterling very quickly. And he knocked out Jimmy Rivera under a minute. So from their first fight, you have to say Marlon Moraes fought better competition, of course, right? And he looked much better. He was a very different fighter in those fights than he was against Raphael Assuncao. In their first fight, the thing that you have to really take notice is Marlon Moraes was forcing his strikes a lot instead of just letting them come like he did against Aljamain Sterling and Jimmy Rivera, right? He wasn't forcing anything. He was just letting things be. He found his openings, and his timing combined with his precision makes him one of the most devastating fighters in the lower weight classes. It's insane how he's able to catch Jimmy Rivera with a head kick the way he did. We all know Jimmy Rivera is a very quick fighter, very quick to get in and out, and he has a great ability to change levels for his takedowns when he goes for strikes. And he got hit by a naked switch left high kick of all things. That is super impressive and super scary. And when you look at the difference between Marlon Moraes in those fights and the fight with Assuncao, he was forcing a lot of punches. He was switching stances when he shouldn't be doing it. A lot of things were just unnecessary from Marlon Moraes. And you could see him, he was breathing a lot. It almost looked like he was trying to calm himself down, which could be octagon jitters. It could be he was a little bit nervous for that fight. First fight in the UFC, and still made it a very close fight with Raphael Assuncao. The Marlon Moraes in the other fights, he was a lot more methodical, a lot more patient. He wasn't switching constantly, throwing these overhands, throwing these hooks for no reason, just to force the punches, instead of letting the openings present themselves. And when he allows openings to present themselves, you see him catch opponents with these well-timed, lethal strikes. And that is someone Assuncao is going to be facing this time around. And Assuncao, on the other hand, he is just overall very well-rounded. Everything is above average, right? His striking, his grappling, his wrestling, his footwork, his defense, his overall offense, his chin, everything is just really good. But nothing about him is super outstanding. But the fact that he's so well-rounded, it's hard to ever catch him clean. He never gives you that opening. And he never forces anything. He never overextends. He never comes at the opponent unless there is an opening for him to do so, unless it's necessary for him. And a Marlon Moraes who forces strikes on him, it's naturally not going to catch him. And this time, Marlon Moraes, with the lethal striking he has, the patient approach, the methodical mindset, I think is going to give Raphael Assuncao a lot more trouble. So in this fight, I'm going to have to go with Marlon Moraes. I do think it should be a pretty close fight. I think there are going to be more inactive moments in the fight because of the different approach of Marlon Moraes, but it will give him more opportunities to land strikes. I actually think this is going to be a decision win for Marlon Moraes. I can see a late knockout, potentially him finding that opening to drop Assuncao, which is a hard thing to do in general, but it's possible, I guess. And now let's look at the betting odds to see if there's anything interesting. I'm actually really curious here. David Tamer is actually an underdog. A very, very slight underdog. It's almost a pick'em fight, but I think he should be a pretty big favorite. Lyman Good is an underdog. I think that might be the best one in the entire card to go with. Either him, Assuncao is, wow. Assuncao is actually a plus 150. Against Marlon Moraes, who is a minus 170 favorite. That's a close fight, man. I do think Moraes should win the fight, but that is a very close fight. Jose Aldo is an underdog as well, so I hope you guys enjoyed the prediction video, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe. For some reason, I'm just super excited for this card, more than normal. Great prospects, great stylistic matchups, fun explosive fights, legends fighting the younger guys in the sport, and competitive fights like the main event. Man, you have it all on this card, and it's going to be on ESPN Plus again, right? Yeah, the entire card is going to be on ESPN Plus. In other countries, I don't know how it works. I don't know if it's still on Fight Pass or whatever. But yeah, and the card is actually going to start 2 hours earlier than usual. So I'm just super excited for this one, for all things involved. So I got some videos I'm working on, some projects I'm working on right now. So be lookout for a bunch of stuff that's about to come out, I guess. And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.